Welcome to From the Burbs to the Tetons. So we're going to start a series on the site plan and developing your site so that you're ready to build. There's several things that you need to think about. Your house design, outbuildings that you want. I'm going to have a workshop with an apartment upstairs, greenhouses, a shed, those kind of things. Where are you going to put the water well? Where are you going to put your septic? Other outdoor living spaces. Maybe you want a putting green or horseshoes or a barbecue pit. And then, once you kind of have an idea there of what you want to do, then you've got to find the right property size. You don't want it too small. You want it big enough. The shape of the property, that can really affect your ability to build a complex on the property. Views, mountain, lakes, oceans, whatever else you may have out there that you want to have a nice view of, you need to take that into consideration on where you're going to put the house on the property. Accessing the property. Do you have a ravine that you have to cross, a river, stream, canals, roadside swales? Then after all of that, then you've got to go look at the CCRs and the county building code to make sure that what you have planned will actually be allowed to be put on that property. So the first thing you've got to do is have access to your property, meaning you need a driveway. Without the driveway, trucks can't get onto your property. Now you might have property that is solid clay or really hard rock, that kind of thing, and the driveway won't be as important. But most construction equipment is going to be a bit on the heavier side, and it's going to need something to be able to drive on so it just doesn't sink into the mud or clay or whatever you've got there and get stuck. So getting a driveway and actually setting up things so that you have someplace to have deliveries made and things like that so that they can do construction is important. Around the building envelope, it's important that things can move around, especially as they get higher up in the build. If you've got a two-story, especially if you're doing like SIPs on the roof, those are heavy. If you don't have equipment that can actually get in there and lift those up and put them on the roof without sinking or tipping over, that's a problem. Some of the things that are going to affect your site layout more than anything else is going to be the size, the shape, and the contour of your property. So let me show you what I had envisioned before I even started looking for property on how I wanted the site to kind of be organized. So here you can see that I kind of have a cul-de-sac with a workshop and then the main house. I always planned to have additional outbuildings, but I didn't think it was important to have any preconceptions about them. This was one of the first properties I got pretty serious about. A couple of things that I liked. I liked the fact that it had the back corner where I could put outbuildings. I liked where it was on the street as far as nobody could really build in front of me and I would lose the view of the Tetons. Some things I didn't like. The two lots together were priced at about $130,000 from my memory, 120 to 130, a little overpriced. The driveway, I would have to, put it in so it swings around into the back to the cul-de-sac. And then the other thing was that the property stayed pretty wet. I noticed that the other house that's right next to this lot did not have a basement. And I'd probably for good reason, because it was just way too wet. Probably would have had to put in a special septic field or actually just a catch tank, a black water tank, and have it pumped all the time. The black water tank would have been reasonably expensive, but the kicker would be how often you would have to have a service come pump the whole thing out. So that quickly fell off my list of properties to purchase. So here were three lots together. This is the front lot out of the three. As I was kind of looking at this lot, the middle lot sold. So you'd only be able to have one lot. And the middle lot was the nicest one. It was the whitest one. And the biggest problem with this one was the lot right in front of it where the X is. I think in one of my other videos I talked about how there was a neighborhood where there was already somebody had built a home in the corner. And then the neighborhood was built around the existing home. I don't know, I think they had 4 or 5 broken down trucks in the back. I didn't get really good goosebumps about purchasing there after looking at it. Plus, it would have been pretty cramped. The price was a little high, not bad. I think this was for 65. It was like 3.3 acres. And if it was the right size, if it would have been just a little bit different, the one behind it I think was like 3.6 acres. This one's 3.3 acres. The 3.6 acres would have worked for me. Again, I was looking for something between 3 and 6 acres, ideally closer to 6 acres. So this next property had 2 lots next to each other that were very, very thin. I was actually worried about putting the main house on one of the properties with the way I have the garage bending a little bit without violating some of the building codes. Secondly, if you can see where the red arrow is, that I'm pretty sure is going to be where the build site is for that house. And because these lots are so thin, they're very specific about their build site. It basically does a Z back and forth. So 395 Butler would have their build site right in the middle of the property. 415, that's an existing home already built. So my build site would likely be really right next to the road, which I swore I wouldn't buy a big lot and then build right next to the road. I'd build, near the middle of it, or at least away from the edge. And then the build site for where I'd want to put the workshop would be right back in the middle again, following that zigzag pattern. The lots were going for about $50,000 each. So that would have been about $100,000 for a little less than 5 acres. Now this property is one I really liked. I came really close to putting in an offer. At the last second, I didn't, based on a new covenant that was added to the CCRs for no short-term rentals. If you go back to my CCR video, I talk about how you want to look at your land on whether or not, is this a forever property that you're going to hand down? Is this 3 to 5 years and then you're going to roll it over and buy something new? But with this being a forever property, knowing that my kids were interested in it, not having short-term rentals available for them when they inherit it would have been a problem. So I ended up not buying this. This was 5 acres. It was a good shape, a good size, had decent views of the Teton mountain range. The neighborhood was kept in pretty good shape. The yards were clean. Some of the houses were a little small, but to me it's more the feel of the neighborhood than making sure that they're all 2,000 or 3,000 square foot homes. Mine would have been one of the bigger homes in the neighborhood. I liked everything about the property except the CCRs. It prevented me from buying the property. So let's move on to the first cut of my site plan. So what you see here, that's going to be the workshop. And then the next thing we move on to is the main house. And that's the water system, and that's right between the 2 greenhouses. And this is the septic field and tank, where the electrical and the propane are going to go. And greenhouses. And these are going to be tube greenhouses. And then that's where the culvert is. And this is the swoosh or S-curve in the driveway. I think it gives it character. I've got a 100-yard driveway, and having a straight 100-yard driveway just didn't make sense to me. Needed to have a little something there. Also where the S is, that there's like a little hump in the landscape that it drops about 2 feet at that point, and it looks really good. I like it. Like I said, I think it gives the property character. Now the other little break-off driveway is just an example of where the driveway will go when we break off the other 10 acres of the property. If you haven't seen some of my other videos yet, the property I have is 20 acres. I'm building on 10 acres of it to spec for the county so that I can eventually break the property into 2 10-acre lots. Let's move on to the current site plan. So some of the changes that have been made: the septic tank has now been moved downhill south of the workshop. The next thing is the water well and the water tank have been moved up the hill to the north side of the workshop apartment. Needed to be moved away from the septic fields. By statute, you can't have it within 50 feet of the tanks or 100 feet of the fields. And then the next thing you'll see is that we moved the fire pond. Now, the fire pond would have been uphill to most of the property, and trying to pump everything uphill wouldn't have made sense. Now it's downhill. The hoop greenhouses are the only thing that we're not 100% sure on where we're going to put them, but I'm pretty sure we're going to put them here. And I only put one on here, but there's likely to be 3. We'll start with 1. If it works well and we use it and we need more space, there'll be enough room for 3 of them. And you can see where the red X is. The red X is there because I realized we didn't want to put 2 or 3 of them there, because if you see the big green circle area, that's where we want to plant a whole bunch of trees and shrubs, a lot of them native to the area, maybe some of them not native. I would like to have some apple trees and some cherry trees, things like that may not be native to the area. But the idea is for that to be kind of like our little sanctuary of green. If we had the hoops where the X is, then what would happen is from both the front and back porches of the guest house, you'd see those would be kind of like in the way, kind of eyesores. And definitely if you were on the front porch of the main house, it would be completely blocked. So that's why that was done. Let's go ahead and move on to the journey of designing this driveway. So here, this is video of me doing my due diligence in February of the property. I wanted to walk the property, but there was a foot of snow on the property, as well as a 3-foot berm of snow between me and the property. And then under that berm of snow was a swale and also the canal. And I wasn't interested in twisting my ankle and falling down in the snow and nobody seeing me and freezing to death. So I decided not to walk it. And it's not like I'd never seen the property before. The street to the left of the car, the direction I'm driving, I'd gone up and down that street 100 times looking at property there. So I really felt comfortable without walking the property. That tree that was shown there, and you can see it there too, is the edge of the property. Here I'm laying out and that's the septic field test that they did, those rocks and everything on top. I'm now walking the property, kind of laying it out, trying to figure out where everything's going to go. And this is just so when I get back home, I can update the site plan in the computer. There's other trips out where I actually had a paint stick and measuring. What I'm using is, I'm an avid golfer, and that's my rangefinder for golfing, which was adequate at the time to just get a general idea of where everything was going to be. This trip, my wife actually came out, so I'm out there doing this, walking, and felt like 3 or 4 miles by the time I was done, because I didn't get the whole thing on video. So one of the things that I spent a lot of time on, going back and forth over and over and over and over again, was the little S thing. At what point should the turn start? How far should the turn be? Should it be, 10 yards total as far as, right to left? And then how deep should it be? Should it be, should I start at 65 yards and end at 100 yards? Should I start at 85 yards? And a lot of it had to do with where the septic field test was done. That septic field test is right on this kind of bump ledge kind of thing. You go about 15 feet past that, and it drops over about a 20 or 30 foot run 2 to 3 feet. In every video I've taken, it's hard to tell except when they were actually working on the driveway. So here is where this is the actual marking of where the driveway was going to be put. I did this in the spring. Took the picture, was able to include this both in the culvert design and also for the permit to attach the driveway to the county road. And you can see that beautiful yellow bush in the background that's and on some of the other videos. That is the corner of my property. So instead of a picture this week, I thought I'd give you a sneak peek of the driveway. Next up is going to be, working on the culvert, and then after the culvert, doing the driveway. Enjoy. If you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. If you want to know when I've uploaded a new video, go ahead and click the bell button.